Welcome back to PR2700 Project Management. I'm Paul Tilley and I'm your instructor for the course. Today we're taking a look at Unit 8, Project Human Resource Management. And this is probably the most important topic because it deals with the people that you will deal with in order to help facilitate the project moving along. You'll find the material covered in this unit in Module 8, Project Human Resource Management, and you'll also find it in Chapter 9 of the textbook. Our basic learning objective here is to explain the importance of good human resource management in projects, and we're going to discuss the human resource planning and the limitations and benefits of different organizational models in supporting project activities. Human resource management is really important because people are an organization's most important asset. They really will determine the success or failure of the organization and the particular projects within the organization. So project managers tend to think that human resource management is one of the toughest challenges that they face because, again, you're dealing with people and the organizational goals may not necessarily align with individual goals, and really we need to be able to kind of align them as much as possible. So this is particularly getting more challenging today in today's world because of the fact that human resources are getting tighter. We have a labor shortage and a skills shortage, and these are creating further challenges. We also have COVID-19 to deal with, and at the point of this recording, we're on the downslope of it, hopefully, but these are again examples of things that come up in everyday world that affect an ability of an organization to achieve its goals. With regards to the future, it's critical that organizations practice what they preach with regards to human resources. So if people are truly great as assets, we have to demonstrate it to the people. It will be very clear to your workers pretty soon if you don't believe that. So if organizations really want to implement any project, IT projects in particular, they're going to need to understand people, what makes people, what are the things that people value, what are the things that people want, in order to help work towards the overall organizational goal. So proactive organizations address current and future human resource needs by improving benefits. So again, the yin for yang, the return. So in terms of you give me this, I will give you that. So we're thinking about incentives, work hours, flexibility at work, perks, dress codes. These are all things that we see as part of this new phenomena of really putting people first. Training can't be underestimated too. Training people is becoming very, very important because people want to advance their careers and companies really need to invest in training. If you're new to project management, we've got to think about people and what are some of the processes and issues that we have to worry about. Knowledge is really centered around the following basic processes. First of all, we need to plan for our human resources. Okay? So we got to identify and document project roles, responsibilities, required skills, reporting relationships, and creating a staffing and management plan. This is really done before projects ever start and it becomes part of the nature of a company. We need to be able to think about things before we do them, and this pre-planning stage is really, really important in order to get the job done right. Once we have it well thought about, we move really to the next process, which is finding and acquiring the people who can do the job. So we got to make sure that we have the right people at the right place at the right time in order to achieve the right degree of effort towards a successful project conclusion. The team needs to be developed throughout too, and this is where training comes in. The process of improving people's competencies and skills is a never-ending process. We need to be able to think about it in terms of how the team interacts, what are some of the shortcomings, what are some of the things that the team excels at. We need to be able to constantly evaluate what's going on and think about what are some of the improvements we can make. And this then leads into the management of the project team. So we got to track the team members' performance. And this performance tracking allows us to kind of make decisions with regards to future events. What type of things did we need to change? So it's the constant monitoring and adapting and retraining that will be required in order to ensure that we optimize project performance. So what do we need to do in order to be able to motivate people? Well, there was a lot of research done over the last 100 years with regards to how do we motivate people in order to ensure that they work towards the goals. And this research has led to some insights into people and how they're motivated, what works, what doesn't, and why things will work and why it doesn't. So we're going to take a look at a few of these right here now. One of the leading theories surrounding motivation came from the research of Abraham Maslow. Maslow created what's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And effectively, what you have is a pyramid type situation of motivation. Maslow said there are 5 basic levels that an individual has, and each of those levels need to be met before someone can be motivated to move to the next level. Take, for example, the very first level, physiological needs. Now, physiological needs are your basic needs of life, okay? Maslow argued, look, if you don't have those basic needs taken care of, you're not going to worry about anything else. So you need physiological needs taken care of first before you can be motivated for the next level, which is safety needs. So once you've got your basic life needs taken care of, then you're going to say, well, okay, I worry about my own safety. You know, it is the food and water that I just need it to survive. Once I've got it and I've eaten it, I think to myself, was that safe, I wonder? So our next level needs would be safety needs. And people won't be motivated to do anything unless their safety needs are met. Once their safety needs are met, then they move on to the next level. They need relationships with other people. Humans are social beings. So we need to be able to have our love and belonging needs met. And if they're not met, we're not going to be able to be motivated to do the next thing. So again, that's a basic level need. If those needs are indeed met, then we move on to the next level of things that motivate us, and that is esteem. Esteem really refers to the feeling that you are good, feeling good about yourself with regards to love and belonging, safety, and physiological. Things like respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, and freedom are all the things that people seek at this level. If they don't have those things met, they're not going to be willing to move to the next level or not going to be motivated by things at the next level. The final level that Maslow talked about was self-actualization. Now it's kind of a nebulous term, but effectively it is when you have everything you need. And it's the most you can be. I always think about Neil Armstrong stood on the moon in July of 1969. You know, here he was, 35 years old, and he's thinking to himself, wow, this is the best I'm ever going to do in my life. You know, this is it. He was so motivated to get to that point. Everything else then would be downhill, wouldn't it? So your self-actualization needs are very hard to achieve, and that's a good thing because we always want to strive to be better, and if those things are met, then that means that we will no longer be motivated to do anything. Another important motivational theory came from Frederick Hertzberg, and effectively what he said was that in his research was there are really 2 major areas that help determine whether a person is going to be motivated towards company goals. The first one he called satisfaction or motivational factors, and the second one he called dissatisfaction factors or hygiene factors. And he said really you need to get both of those right, okay? Both of those right. If we think about satisfiers, motivational satisfiers, things that you like about your job, these things would include performance and achievement, acceptance, job status, responsibility, all these higher level needs that we saw in the Maslow theory. If we look at other factors that turn people off from their job, these things that he called hygiene factors, things like safety, working conditions, the physical workspace, these sorts of things, what we have is a balance between what people like and what people don't like about their jobs. And from Hertzberg's point of view, you know, we need to think about, okay, what do we as managers or as a company have to do in order to ensure that people have more satisfiers and less dissatisfiers? So things like administrative policies, supervision, salary, interpersonal relations, working conditions, the work itself, the achievement recognition, responsibility, opportunity for advancement. All of these things contribute to how a person feels and how a person is motivated to do their job. Yet another theory came from McClellan. What McClellan came up with was a theory called extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. And it kind of built on top of what Hertzberg came up with. And effectively, what he said was that, look, people are motivated by a couple of key things. There's external motivation, which he referred to as extrinsic. And external motivation, someone's causing you to be motivated, or something that is external to you is causing you to be motivated. Higher pay, better hours, nice working conditions. These sorts of things would be considered as extrinsic motivators. Okay? They're the ones that organizations can manage in order to help people feel better about their job. But he also said there's a second motivator that is very, very important called intrinsic motivation. And intrinsic motivation comes from within oneself. And it relates to the higher level needs, again, that Maslow discussed. It is things that you feel inside about your job that make you feel good about your job. Is it interesting work? Do you enjoy who you're working with? Do you get a sense of satisfaction out of the work that you do? Do you feel better at the end of the day? So with McClellan's theory, he said you really need a balance. There needs to be extrinsic motivation, pay and these sorts of things, the tangible things that we can easily see. But people have to feel good about their jobs and feel good about doing it too. And that's very important. You got to make people feel good about it, and people will internalize the job and say, yeah, this is something I want to do. Another theorist came up with a very important and often referred to theory too called XY. Now, XY theory sounds very simplistic, but it does have a lot of meaning. Effectively, X refers to, or Y refers to, the management style, okay, and what people believe about other people as a manager. Theory X managers kind of feel that people don't like work, and they need to be pushed and forced, and they need to be cajoled, they need to be rewarded, they need to be punished, and it's a very we versus they perspective. So he called that type of manager a Theory X. And that would be a very traditional, old school manager, right? You need to be pushed and forced to do your job. But he said, that's one type of manager, but a better type of manager is what's called a Theory Y manager. And a Theory Y manager has the internal belief that employees truly value and enjoy their work. And they'll want to make a contribution, they want responsibility, and they want to do well. They don't really need to be super duper supervised. If they know their job, they can do it. And they feel that, people like working together and doing a good job in order to achieve the result. So the XY theory really looked at one extreme or the other extreme of management styles. Now, truly, people exist in the middle, somewhere between Theory X and Theory Y in terms of their management style. But McGregor argued that a Theory Y approach was a much more productive, and in today's modern world, the Theory Y approach is seen as the standard. We want to be able to value people and believe that people actually value their work. So now that we understand some of the basic concepts surrounding motivation and encouraging people to do the things the organization wants to do, let's look at the manager and the power dynamic of managers. So it's important for project managers really to understand that different types of influence needs to be used in different types of situation, and that they have relative power over their employees or their subordinates. So new project managers often overemphasize their position. They just haven't developed what we call legitimate power. People don't trust them. So this is especially important when dealing with a project team that's new or just starting. So they neglect the importance of developing that power and using other aspects of power, such as the ability to reward people, in order to build people's confidence in them. So people often respond much better to project manager who motivate them with challenging work and positive reinforcement for doing a good job than anything else. So project managers should understand some basic concepts of the influence of power and how power can be used or misused. Essentially, when we think of power, power comes from 5 basic sources. Okay, you have the power to reward, and that's using rewards we can obtain influence over people. And we're very familiar with that. You know, if you give a dog a treat, the dog will do something. We also have, on the opposite extreme, power of coercion. That's being able to force people to do things. And we know that that is probably, it might be effective in the instant, but it certainly doesn't help in the long run. We also have something called legitimate power. Legitimate power is the power granted by the organization. In other words, it's a power entrusted in individuals to do certain tasks. And everybody has a certain degree of legitimate power within their jobs, and project managers will have a certain degree of legitimate power within their job, and it's important that they ensure that they stay within that legitimate power and not exceed it or not underutilize it. Flowing from legitimate power is what we call position power, and it really provides managers with a source of power known about from their expertise. And now obviously as a manager becomes more experienced and gains more experience, their relative position power will increase. So this so-called expert power don't require a title, it just really requires knowledge. And it's really based on knowledge that you have developed over time. And you'll earn respect based on that knowledge. Finally, we have something called reference power. And reference power is power that comes from people who admire you. So basically, you develop a sense in them that you know what you're doing and they trust you. Reference power is very much built on trust. So as a project manager, how do you improve? What do you do in order to be able to take all this information that we've talked about here and kind of work with it? Well, back in the late 80s, Stephen Covey wrote a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in that book, he kind of collapsed all of this basic concept that we've looked at so far into 7 important habits that people should use in order to be able to motivate people and bring people towards the goals of an organization. Covey defines effectiveness as really a balance between desirable results and caring for what produces these results. 2 basic extreme concepts. He introduces the concept of what's called the maturity continuum. And really there are 3 successive stages of increased maturity. Dependence, independence, and then interdependence. Dependence really looks at being dependent on others. And if we think about our beginning of our life, we were absolutely dependent on someone to survive. Many people go through life remaining in this stage where they're dependent on others, and it's really a bit of an attitude that develops where it's really focused on you did this to me, or you take care of me, or it's your fault, or I'm going to blame you. Covey said that a lot of people, with training and development emerge out of dependence into what's called an independent stage, where pretty much we feel that we have good control over what's going on. Okay? We're free from the external influence of others. So we're more independent. We switch from a you to an I perspective. And really the avowed goal of many individuals is really to make sure that they're independent and they're not influenced by others. So it's more mature and more advanced, but it's not exactly where we need to go. The highest level that he defined was something called interdependence. And the interdependence is really essential for good leaders. And good leaders are team players. They find a successful marriage between life and work, and dependence and interdependence. From a you to an I to a we perspective. And it involves cooperation and working together in order to combine talents to achieve a certain goal. So Covey came up with 7 habits of highly effective people that incorporated this basic concept of these 3 levels into things a person can do tangibly in order to work towards this concept of interdependence. Okay? The first habit that he talked about was something called being proactive. And proactive means thinking ahead, okay? And taking responsibilities for the actions based on one's own experiences. So you want to focus on one's responsibilities and focus on one's center of influence. So think about what you're doing and do it right. The second major habit looked at beginning with the end in mind. Now, more modern terminology is visioning. Okay, we hear tell the word visioning. He uses the word mission statement, and effectively, what it is thinking about what you want. Can you, in your mind, envisage what you want as the ideal end of this project? So here you are, you're at the beginning of a project. You should know in your mind what you want in the end. That's the vision. The mission statement is how you achieve really towards that vision. So we need to envision the future, and we need to think about it and put plans in place in order to work towards that goal. And then you got to be able to communicate that goal to everyone. So to be effective, one needs to act based on the principles and constantly review one's mission and vision to make sure you're heading towards it. Are you headed in the right direction? He says that things are really created twice, in your head and in reality. Okay? So don't just act, think about it first, and then once you have it well thought out, do it. The third habit that Covey talks about is putting first things first. In other words, prioritizing what is important. And he uses the concept of a quadrant. So basically, we look at all things and ask ourselves, how important is it? And secondly, when does it need to be done? How urgent is it? And we do the things that are super important and super urgent first. Okay, quadrant one is urgent and important. Those are ones we got to do. Things that aren't urgent but important, we should start planning those. We'll get those planned. Things that are urgent but not important, get someone else to do those. Delegate them. And things that are not urgent and not important, don't do those. Save yourself a lot of trouble. That's distractions. So the order is critically important. You need to think about all of the tasks in quadrant one first, the important ones that need to be done, and work your way down through. So you really need to do it carefully. So these first three of the habits are really very much dependence based. The final habits move towards interdependence. The fourth habit says think win-win. And what we do here is say, can we achieve a solution to all the problems we face so that everybody wins, as opposed to you win, I lose. Okay? So we need to seek what's called mutual benefit. These win-win solutions help build relationships. They lead to valuing and respecting people, and ultimately better long-term relationships that result in better long-term solutions, not quick fixes. Habit 5 says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So the idea of listening more and speaking less. So use empathetic listening and genuinely understanding where the person has come from. And that really compels them to do the same. Okay, as opposed to shouting at one another, listen, and then that enforces or reinforces the concept of listening. Keeping an open mind, open to idea, creates an atmosphere of caring and positive problem solving. The sixth habit deals, as we move towards interdependence, moves towards a concept called synergizing. And synergizing is really combining the strengths of people to work as a team. So what we do is we build on everybody's strength to achieve the goal so that no one is left out and that everyone brings something to the table in order to get the final job done. The final habit is really focused on continuous improvement, or in Japanese, it's Kaizen, which is common with regards to quality management initiatives. So, sharpening the saw, he called it, and Covey really argued that one should balance and renew one's resources, energy, and health to create a sustainable, long-term, effective lifestyle. Emphasize exercise, physical renewal, good prayer, good reading, good mental rewarding. He also mentions service to society for spiritual renewal. So this is giving back and working within society. He called this a virtuous circle or an upward spiral, where if we work towards something positive, positive things will emerge, and this will continue to create positivity. Building on top of Covey, in 1990, another concept came out called emotional intelligence. This was developed by John Mayer and Peter Slovely. And effectively, what it says is that, people need to be self-aware, again, dealing with this idea of the independence moving towards interdependence. They need to have self-management capacity. They need to be socially aware. Covey talked about that in his seventh, the idea of being to a greater society. And they need to focus on relationship management. So these are key things that was talked about with emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence, again, spurs on this basic concept that we need to think about people as people. And individuals need to understand what make other individuals tick. So essentially what we looked at here today was the concept of leadership. And really, leadership is the ability to inspire other people to achieve goals, particularly organizational goals. Leadership capacity is learned over time, and it involves interpreting and understanding how people work, the psychology aspect of people, and respecting people, particularly people as a group, towards a win-win, greater societal perspective. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know, and we'll see you in the next unit.